welcome to This Ohio Farmhouse. We're going to be canning some green beans today, meaning that they have to go into a pressure canner. Some things can just be water bath canned, but if it has low acidity, you need to throw those into the pressure canner and follow the proper guidelines. So I'm going to walk you through that really quickly because a lot of people are really intimidated by a pressure canner, thinking that it's going to explode on them or blow up. And in previous years, long ago, they didn't have nearly the safety mechanisms on them that they have now. And so really, it's pretty rare that things go pretty badly. So as long as you follow a couple of pretty simple steps, it's very, very easy to get things canned. Green beans is one of the most simple things that you can do because you don't have to do hardly anything to prepare.
We know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Call us crazy, but things are finally right. With you and I, the future is bright.
So behind me, I have my pressure canner filling up with some water. I'm gonna start heating that up and getting that warm. Behind me on my stove, I have a pot of water that I'm getting ready to boil, and that's just for the purpose of sanitizing my jars. You want to make sure that you are doing everything as clean as possible and really sanitizing things because you want to eliminate any chance of having botulism issues. So I'm just working on snapping all of my beans that I brought inside. This is just the very beginning of our harvest, but in the beginning, it's a little bit slow. And so I bring things in and I just throw them into like a Ziploc bag like this and pop them into the refrigerator until I have enough to make worthy of a canning session. So that's what I'm doing today. I have plenty to get going, and so I'm gonna do the first round, but I wanted to walk you alongside. Now there's lots of different ways that you can can green beans. Sometimes the instructions will have you put salt in. I am going to just leave mine completely plain. Now the reason for that is because we use them in various different ways. Sometimes I'm going to be adding them into a soup or a stew. Other times we're just going to be pouring them into a pot and warming them up, and I can just add the salt at that point. But I want to be able to season them differently each time, and I don't necessarily always want there to be salt on them. There are recipes out there for doing dilly beans and all kinds of things. Now at this time of the year, things are crazy, and so I need to get as many jars canned up and done and on the shelves in as short of amount of time as possible because I have so many things going on, so many irons in the fire that I need simplicity at this time of the year. So I'm doing green beans just in water. It is so simple. You can really snap your beans any size that you want. I tend to do them about 2 inches so that they are able to come out of a canning jar easily when I just pour them out. Otherwise, they tend to kind of get stuck in there. But some people like to have them quite a bit bigger, and it really doesn't make a difference. All right, so I just opened a brand new box of canning jars, but they still need to be sterilized to make sure that there isn't any bacteria lingering in there or anything that's going to cause any problems. So I'm going to throw those into a pot on the stove. There are a few different methods that you can do. They can actually go into the dishwasher and go at a really high temperature, and it will sterilize them that way. There's a method that you can throw them into your oven as well, which works great. I'm just going to go ahead and throw them into this pot of boiling water on the stove. I just run back and forth as I'm snapping the beans and getting things ready. I'm letting the jars sit in here and sterilize. People will argue how long it really takes in order to sterilize a jar properly. People will say anywhere from about 5 to 15 minutes to get them nice and clean. So I'll leave them in for about 5, and then I switch them out and grab the next set, throw those in, and then I go back to snapping more beans. So kind of simultaneously, I'm snapping beans, I've got jars sterilizing, and then I'm also going to run my canner outside and get that heating up. And we do all of our pressure canning outside on this cook stove because inside we have an induction cooktop, partially for safety reasons so that I can have my kids cooking. As they get a little bit older, I'll probably want to switch that out and go back to a gas stove, but for now, It's super efficient and safe, and so I feel much more comfortable having my kids participate in cooking meals on their own using the induction top. So for now I'm doing all of the canning outdoors that requires the pressure canner. Inside, my normal water bath canner works just great on the stovetop, and so I can use that, but the pots have to be magnetic, and the pressure canner unfortunately doesn't work in here. And just kind of a perk of that is being able to keep the heat outside as much as possible. Green beans, you want to make sure that you're really applying pressure and pushing those down in there really tightly. Otherwise, they're going to raise up and kind of float in your jar. You want to take up as much space as possible. Now, as you fill these with water, you might notice that there's still a little bit of space because they're going to shift around a bit and fill in some empty spaces. So you're just going to add in a couple more beans if that's needed, just to make sure that you're filling the entirety of the space. So I cleaned out the pot that I was sanitizing my jars in, refilled it with some water, and I am just going to start ladling this into my jars. Okay, this is one of those cases where a funnel is definitely helpful. Now when you're canning, you're going to hear the term that you need to leave 1 inch of headspace. If you're looking at your canning jar, what that means is basically to the bottom of this rim needs to be completely full. Now, you don't want your beans to be up over top of it. They need to actually be covered by water. So if you look at mine right now, I have a little bit too much. So you want something long and skinny here that you're going to be able to push down into the sides, and you're trying to get any bubbles that are trapped in there to be released. Then you're going to shove all of your beans back down inside. Make sure that they're in there nice and tight and under that rim. And if they want to poke their heads up a little bit, just tuck them underneath that rim. Okay, and then you're going to go ahead and put your lid on. When they say finger tight, that means that you're twisting this just past the point a little bit where it's loose. So you don't want to just put a bunch of force into it and go too tight. It's just barely on there. And then I'm going to go ahead and just keep filling all of my jars. So I'm out on my front porch where the canner is all set up and ready to go. I'm going to start loading my jars in there. Now you want to make sure that in your canner you have about 3 inches of water in the bottom. When you're water bathing, you need to cover all of your jars by a couple of inches, and that's not the same case when you are doing a pressure canner. So you want about 3 inches in the bottom, and inside of there is a nice tray. You want to make sure that you have that inserted into the bottom of your pot. Otherwise, you're going to have some problems in your processing because that has several holes in the bottom of it, and it allows all of the water and the steam to circulate and go around the jars rather than the jars setting right onto the bottom of your pot. So definitely make sure that you have that inserted in there. Now you want to make sure that everything is a similar temperature. Now you don't want to go and put a cold jar into a hot pot of water, and you don't want to do vice versa because you're going to have breakage and problems. So now that we have our jars packed, we put all of those beans in there, but then we covered those with nice hot water. So that's a warm product, and then we're going to put that into our steam canner. And that has already been warmed up, and so that's not going to cause any kind of crackage or problems. That means that you're not going to start actually timing it until it has come to pressure, and that the little knob on the top, the pressure gauge, starts to really jiggle around. I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like because mine is just now coming to pressure. Okay, so that's how you know that it's up to pressure. I'm going to go ahead and start my timer now for 25 minutes. And we're gonna let these sit in here and do their thing. Okay, I'm just at the very tail end of this. It's coming down from being pressurized. You can hear it really just slowing down how much steam is coming out of there. Once that is all finished, I'm gonna go ahead and unscrew the lid and remove that and go ahead and take my jars out. Those are gonna be covered right away with a towel to keep them from changing temperature too quickly so that they can have a slow temperature change. Okay, I have all of my jars out of the pressure canner successfully. Nothing blew up, and we have them inside. I have them covered with just a tea towel. That's gonna slow the process a little bit so that they don't cool down too fast. Now over the next 12 or so hours, there was one that just popped. Over the next 12 or so hours, you're gonna be listening for that ping sound to make sure that they have sealed completely. Once you have let them sit for a while, you don't want to check this right now because it takes quite some time sometimes for the lid to actually go down and to ping the way that it's supposed to. So once they're all completely cooled and all of the lids have done what they're supposed to do, I'm going to go ahead and clean the jars off, because they do get some of the minerals and things from the water that just kind of settle onto the jars. You get like this white film. So I'm going to just wipe those down, label them with what they are, which you can pretty well tell what green beans are, but I definitely want to put the year on the lid as well, just to make sure that they're not getting confused and that we're cycling through things the way that we need to, using the oldest stuff first. So really, pressure canning is much simpler than what you think. It seems really intimidating, but I hope that I made this process a little bit simpler so that you feel comfortable and confident in giving it a try yourself. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week on This Ohio Farmhouse.